Welcome to the deepest and bloodiest pages of history, to the screams hidden behind those magnificent marble facades. Today, we are going to examine the dark side of Rome. Victory, torture, and entertainment. When the name Rome is mentioned, most of you probably think of pearly white marble columns, philosophers debating under the sun, and emperors resting in their palaces. But here is what doesn't come to mind. What kind of end did Rome prepare for the people it brought to their knees? Moreover, this horror didn't happen on the battlefields. It began after the war ended. When the weapons were laid down, the show began, and the defeated were kept alive in agony for every second of it. The dark face of Rome revealed itself right there. Beneath it lay neither a noble soul nor a profound virtue, only an atrocity adorned with ceremonies and legitimized by rigid protocols. Because for Rome, victory was merely a pretext. The real hell came afterward. Queens who had ruled empires were paraded through the streets, chained like exotic animals. Commanders who had led armies of 50,000 drew their last breaths in damp cells beneath sacred hills. Princesses were thrown before legionnaires like spoils of war. That same empire, which taught stoic virtue and glorified the rule of law in its poems, had implemented a system of humiliation that even its own historians struggled to hold their pens to describe. Today, we step into that system. We will walk alongside Queen Zenobia, stumbling through the streets of Rome with the golden chains of Palmyra. We will stand by Boudica, whose flesh was torn by Roman whips, while her own people watched in horror. And we will descend into the dark depths of the Tullianum with Vercingetorix, while the crowd above roars and applauds for his death. This is not the polished version found in school books. This is the reality they buried under shiny words like conquest and civilization. The battlefield outside Antioch was silent. No screams remained, no sound of swords. Only Roman soldiers wandered among the corpses, separating those still breathing from the dead. Queen Zenobia's army was shattered. The commanders already knew what defeat meant. You fight, you lose, and you die with a shred of honor. But Rome never followed that script. Rome had entirely different plans for the survivors. Dead enemies carry a single message. But broken, shattered survivors keep that message alive for generations. This is the part your teachers never mention. The moment the war ended, Zenobia was no longer a human being in the eyes of Rome. In legal literature, there was a very civilized-sounding term for this: ius gentium, the law of nations. In reality, it said this: if you are not Roman and you lose to Rome, you are now an object. Your throne has no authority, your victories have no meaning, and your lineage has no importance. The contrast is truly heartbreaking. A Roman citizen facing a judge is a human being before the law, but a captive queen kneeling before a Roman general is merely an asset. Yesterday she ruled legions. Today she was an item on a logistics list alongside shields, coins, horses, and slaves. If you were a man, your future was limited and ugly. You could be sold as a slave for hard labor, sent to the mines, or turned into entertainment material for the audience in the arena. If you were a woman, and noble at that, the picture grew even darker. Forced labor, sexual assault, imposed marriage, being reduced to a household item. In the morning, you wore a royal robe. By evening, a slave chain might be fastened around your neck. Rome understood something beyond brute force, theater and terror. Their defeat had to be turned into a public spectacle. This is why the triumph met the stage of history. A triumph was not an ordinary parade. It was a state-organized ritual of humiliation. Behind the treasures came the captives. This was the section you definitely did not want to be in. Ancient sources describe Zenobia's attire in the triumph of 274 AD, incredibly heavy jewelry and massive golden chains. They were so heavy that servants had to walk beside her to carry part of the weight so she wouldn't collapse. Every step was an agony. Rome had chosen gold instead of iron, not as a gesture of mercy, but as a form of mockery. The message was razor-sharp. All the treasures she commanded had been melted down into shackles. She was a walking billboard of Roman power. However, Rome didn't always kill their enemies. Sometimes they broke them. Zenobia lived out her days in a villa near Tibur, under constant supervision. Not freedom, not death, but something right in the middle. A conversation piece at Roman dinner parties. Now, move the scene to the cold, damp island of Britain. Boudica, queen of the Iceni, sought to protect her family's future. But when her husband died, Rome confiscated everything. When Boudica protested, Roman officers had her whipped in front of her own people and attacked her daughters. This was a policy supported by a legal system that defined no crime against the other. But this lesson backfired. Boudica's army reached massive strength, burning Roman colonies to the ground. When she was finally defeated, she refused to be a display object across the ocean. She drank poison. She chose a quick exit rather than becoming a living trophy. And for those who were not spared, the end came in the Tullianum. Vercingetorix, who had united the Gallic tribes against Julius Caesar, spent 6 years in captivity waiting for Caesar's triumph. In 46 BC, he was paraded through the streets, weakened and transformed by imprisonment. After the parade, he was brought to the Tullianum. A rope tightened around his neck. While the city above feasted and celebrated Caesar's victory, Vercingetorix died in the damp, foul air of that pit. Numidian King Jugurtha suffered a similar fate, but slower. He was thrown into the pit and left to starve. A king who once bargained with consuls was left clawing at stone walls in total darkness. When you read about Roman integration or provincial management in modern books, remember these faces. Behind the philosophy, the law codes, and the magnificent architecture was a system that could strip a queen of all rights and drag a king through the streets in chains. Next time you hear the word victory, don't just think of the general in his chariot. Think of Zenobia, struggling under the weight of gold. Think of Boudica, planning revenge with fresh wounds. Think of Vercingetorix and Jugurtha, scratching at the stone walls in a dark pit. Ask yourself, what did Rome fear more? Enemy armies or enemy stories? Because in every shackle, every public whipping, and every execution in that pit, they weren't just punishing bodies. They were polluting their own past and controlling the narrative, ensuring that people spoke of Rome not with hope, but with terror